Episode 3 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier has just come out this last Friday, and because of that, I thought this would be kind of a good little segue time to talk about my thoughts on the series so far, since we're now officially halfway through. So this way I don't have to share my thoughts every single episode, but at the same time I don't have the entire responsibility of like 6 episodes of reviewing what is done. A weird trend that I've found like on the internet with reviewers is they'll hop on and they'll talk about what happened in the show. That's what they'll do. They'll sit down and say, okay, episode 3, here's what happened. They'll lay it all out. And then at the very end, after about 8 minutes of explaining everything that happened, they'll say, okay, excited for the next episode. And I don't know, to me, that's really interesting. It's like everyone seems to be avoiding the topic of what they actually thought about it. And maybe that just means that they're happy with it and they're looking forward to the next show. You know, that's probably it. But it also seems like this weird avoidance thing where they're kind of trying to stand off and just fill the runtime of the video with just talking about what their thoughts are. So instead of explaining what happened in the show, I'm going to assume you've seen it. And if you haven't, go watch it. Episode 1 dropped, and straight out the gate 3 weeks ago, I was really excited to have something in normal Marvel fashion back up and going. With WandaVision, I haven't shared my thoughts on that. I'll probably get to that soon. I really enjoyed WandaVision. There was a lot of great things about it, and it took a very nice turn from the usual typical Marvel fashion. With that being said, it was really nice to have a show that kind of just got back into the usual style of Marvel, which I've always enjoyed. I always thought was a great thing. Now, the way I looked at this show is after watching WandaVision, I realized if they can get me to care about Wanda and Vision, the two characters I gave the least amount of care for in the entire MCU, if they could get me to care about them, I was really excited to see what they could do with Falcon and Winter Soldier, who I do kind of care about. And so far, I have a bit of a mixed reaction to that. With episode 1 dropping, they did a pretty solid job of introducing characters, delving into their lives a little bit more, which you've never been able to see, and that's been really great. It's been really fun seeing Bucky in his more normal form with a haircut, finally, thank heavens, and he looks good again. They both look good together, and you have some fun action scenes. Hopping into episode 2, things got a little bit more generic. Episode 2 really fell into typical Marvel fashion in a bit of a redundant way. They brought Bucky and Falcon together, and with it immediately started the quips and the jokes. And I love Marvel humor. I think for the most part it's pretty well written, with the exception of some overkills like Guardians of the Galaxy and such. But, you could tell it was being written in. You could tell that they were trying to force this typical Marvel humor. And while it wasn't bad, while I enjoyed watching it, it was very easily detectable as overdone. And that's where they started introducing this terrorist group who has this weird, big saying where they're just like one world, one people. And I'm just, in my head, that is not enough to signify a villain group. We still don't like this group, not because, they're bad villains, but because they're not well-written villains so far. Like, what is their purpose, This terrorist group that they're trying to stop, their purpose is to bring things back to where it was when half the world was snapped out of balance. So you're just going to blow up half the world? Like, even real terrorist organizations today realize that that is not realistic. Even the most vile terrorist organization groups don't usually just have hopes of, okay, we got to wipe out half humanity, or we got to wipe out all this race. They start and they say, okay, we got to do this and this and this. This group, like, their actual motivation is just to put it back where it was. The way I see it, their motivations are really vague. It's super generic bad guy stuff, and it doesn't actually make sense on a technical level. Thanos' plan, that made sense. He could actually achieve stones, the most powerful stones in the universe, to snap the world into half of its existence. These people are just people. And yeah, they have superhuman serum in them, but you don't have 5 galaxy stones that are going to help you control everything. So it's completely unbelievable at this point, and they really need to delve more into what their purpose is. I was hoping episode 3 would do that, and it did not. So let's talk about episode 3. Episode 3, if I have to be completely straightforward, was a disappointment. It was not good to me. And there's good parts of the third act, but they really just shoehorned things in there that just was like, what are we watching? My wife and I actually got to a point about, I think it was like a half hour into the episode, where they start this gunfight, and they're shooting at each other, and the bad guys, they're literally just going, poo poo, doo doo, poo poo, doo doo, poo poo. Like, they literally just do that for 5 straight minutes. They even crack a joke about how it happens in every action movie, but just cracking a joke about it doesn't mean that it's suddenly relevant to do it in your movie. And about that point is when my wife and I got a notification on my phone while watching, and I had to communicate with some people, and I was so uninterested in what was happening, I phased out for about 5 minutes. After about 5 minutes, I came back and they were doing something. I'm like, hey, hun, like, what's been happening? And she was on her phone. She's like, I don't know. I've never had that sense while watching either WandaVision or the previous episodes of this show. It really got very uninteresting and super generic with the gunfights and the whole Hong Kong investigation thing. Don't get me wrong, there was fun parts of it, but in general, it really kind of fell on its face to me. And I do have to now talk about the endings of these episodes, because in typical Marvel, or I should just say TV show fashion, has anyone noticed how their twist at the end of every episode is, okay, they do stuff, and then at the very end, let's introduce one new person, and then cut. And that's the new person we'll introduce for the next episode. And then at the end of that episode, we'll introduce a brand new person. You'll be like, what? And then it'll cut. And they've done that 3 times now for every episode. For episode 1, it was at the end of it, they introduced the new Captain America, and you're like, what? And then at the end of episode 2, it's a Zemo, and you're like, what? And then at the end of episode 3, if you just watched it, spoiler alert, it's a Wakandan, right? A Wakandan shows up and is basically like, we want Zemo back because you broke him out. Not cool. It just gets old. Like, we now get your pattern, right? At the end, you're going to introduce some cool new person. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited to have the Wakandans involved. Like, half the time we know it's coming. And then the other half, it's like, we know that somebody's coming because you've set up such a typical fashion. So I think that's just kind of a lazy way of creating a twist. It never is a thing that's involved. That could change in future episodes. It's always a new person introduced. And that's gotten a little rehashable for me. I know I'm ranting a lot, but I do also want to mention at this point, one of the main villains that they've introduced that's a part of this terrorist organization who acts as a girl named Carly. Her name's Erin Kellyman. Her character, they're really trying to get you to like. And for some reason, for me, it's just not working, right? So this episode, in very stereotypical fashion, they're like, how can we make you feel bad for this girl? Because nobody really likes her at this point. And so they show a scene where she has her dying mother. I believe it's her dying mother. I might have not been paying enough attention for it to be somebody else. And she's just sitting there crying. And it's like, you can't just slap a dying mother onto every situation of a villain and justify what they're doing or get you to care about them. That's just not how it works. The last complaint I'm going to throw out about this movie involves the new Captain America, which is John Walker, I think. I really don't like where they're heading with this, okay? And what I mean by that is they introduce this character, right? He's the new Captain America. You're obviously not supposed to like him because he's not Steve Rogers. And then you're not supposed to because Bucky and, Falcon also don't like him. But as it goes along, Winter Soldier and Falcon, they both kind of keep being jerks to him until finally at the end of episode 2, he's like, well, I have a bit of advice for you. If you're not going to help me, stay the heck away from me. And that's the moment at which everyone who I've watched reviews for are like, yeah, I hate this guy. He's going to be a bad one. And I really don't like what they're doing with that. Because literally all he's done at this point is act like a normal freaking human being. Seriously, if you look at it from a non-biased perspective, all that Bucky and Sam have done is be complete jerks to him. Because he's not the Captain America. He's just doing his job from the government and trying to be the best he can be. And so my annoyance with this is they're obviously trying to turn him into a guy you don't like. And it's like, why? Why do you have to do that? He's literally just behaving the way any normal person would. As a matter of fact, flipped around, it's absolutely something that Sam and Bucky would turn around and say, some bit of advice, stay the heck out of my way. Like, that's something they would do, except you'd be like, yeah, when they do it. They're trying to get you to hate him with evil music that plays and with him being kind of, a blunt person. It's okay to admit that sometimes your main protagonist of the show, like Wanda or like Vision, or in this case, Bucky and Sam, it's okay to admit that you like them, but they're not exactly on the good side of things. They're literally anti-heroes here. They're just doing whatever the heck they want. They're not following the government. I know in typical Marvel fashion, what they're probably going to do is episodes down the line, they're going to make him, try to sacrifice a child or kill a human in order to get what he wants, because that's what they have to do to get people to say, oh, yeah, I hate him now, because there are people like me otherwise who just be like, well, technically he's not doing anything bad. And there's villains in WandaVision who were of the same fashion. I just wish Marvel would be a little bit more self-aware about their characters and realize just because they're countering our main protagonist doesn't mean that they actually are bad. It just means that sometimes our superheroes that we're rooting for are not actually quite doing the right thing. That's my thoughts in general, though. I know this is an unpopular opinion, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments and tell me what your thoughts are on the show. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Later, guys.